Hello everyone. Today I, West Shrimp Pillboy Savage here. This is episode 2 of the Pantone expose. I promised I'd mention the evidence, some of the evidence to the GEET I showed on Serve All Ones, including his video, and the link including the evidence I showed on video that I'll use as evidence. Here it is in 2012. This is the first few pieces. Number 1 is an Old Dominion University made a series of publicized documents, PDF form on the internet you can actually grab yourself and read, talking about steam reforming using a counterflow heat exchange using the exhaust as the heat source. If you look at the file, it's just the GEET design but altered a little and uses all black iron piping across the board. Another piece of evidence, something that might be considered evidence on how it works. I found some book references of a steam electromagnet experiments performed by Donato Tomasi back in the Electrical Engineer Volume 1, as well as 2 book links I'll show you for Google Books. It was mentioned by the 2009 GEET Fuel Processor PDF on SlideShare by Naravasan and a few others. It's still there. The main reference is on page 133 of the file. Another intriguing bit, speaking of Serve All One's video, speaking of him, 7 minutes 44 seconds to 7 minutes 52 seconds of his Paul Pantone GEET plasma being formed through sight glass video. You can see the sunlight you're going to see a glimpse of sunlight, but the lighting of that is solid white or slight yellow, like typical sunlight. But George, you're going to see when you see you put the camera lens down in there, that there's a blue ring inside. A blue ring. A blue ring in that sight glass, or inside of it, around the metal rod. And that's not the sunlight playing tricks on your eyes. It is a separate it's a separate glow that you can see in the camera. You can take screenshots of this. Inside the middle pipe around the rod. So that could really be, that might be a plasma or just steam reformer, but it might also be the plasma, although a very small plasma. If it is, I think it could be just very small, because if it was big enough, the recording he did would not have been saved, and it would have been wiped. The memory card would be wiped, according to Pantone and other people. Tested it underground and made it work. Managed to just to get it to work. Now, if he was, like I said, if he's still able to record it and keep the video file inside the memory of that card of that camera, then upload it, at least it's that's possible. At least it was fuel reforming and a possible plasma, which had a good sign, at least borderline conclusive evidence showing on that camera. And the fact that the engine was running very flawlessly. No engine performance issues were made. He ran a power drill on it on camera. So it worked with a load to it as well. Another thing to point out, another piece of evidence to point out is France. I mentioned it in part 1. France sells thousands of these conversions to this. It's called eCopra. It's running on this kind of system, and that's the production version. It's based off of the GEET system and a farmer named Gilliers or whatever version of the system. And like I said, it's called eCopra, and it does give real results. I also researched a controversial page, but in spite of the fact that the guy who created it Andreas Kelker went around promoting and advocating the use of MMS, which I've tackled already. Which, as it's claimed, the guy did use some degree of solid science on the page talking about the GEET. Andreas Kalker's page on the GEET actually had some legit evidence to it. I had to archive it because the old webpage no longer exists. Can't imagine why. And I could actually point these out to you using what he used in the page and transition it over into to draw a picture. I'm going to use some of the stuff that's actually scientific stuff that Kalker's page used, and then transition that over into how the GEET would work to give you a picture of what the GEET system's principles are. Excuse me for a second. I am going to get the files out of my case, and I will get right to you. Do not worry. Some of these files, I told certain people I would actually open source, since I got my own copies printed. I promised I would open source them as well. We'll get into that in episodes 4. Excuse me just for a moment, please. Here we go. And well, folks, imagine this. Andreas said that by centrifugal forces in the vortex tube, which is mounted in a heat exchanger, light and heavy molecules are separated into the exhaust pipe. Due to the temperature and the amount of vacuum, the water is heated to a supercritical temperature and splits into hydrogen and oxygen. This with thermolytic iron. And this is actually accurate because of the Lavoisier experiment actually confirms this. He separated hydrogen from water by using fire to heat up a gun barrel. Here's the next piece. Now imagine that if you put it under a vacuum and you had some types of fuel vapors. Imagine this, it's heated to a very critical temperature and splits into hydrogen and oxygen in a reaction thermolytic with the heated iron, and some of the oxygen reacts to the carbon to make and whatnot, and the hydrocarbon molecules endure breakdown the catalytic or hydrolysis. So, and this makes and then if there is any moisture left over, it's highly critical steam. Imagine this, the high compression for diesel or gas. Imagine if the high compression and the hydrogen and lightweight hydrocarbons and the syngas helps to improve the burning by accelerating the reaction, burning of fuel in the engine, resulting in oxyhydrogen, carbon monoxide, lightweight hydrocarbons, gas reactions, burning, and the residual water, and if there was any residual moisture coming out of the reformer. The micro drops of steam expand After the syngas explosion, it will eruptly as high-pressured steam. This provides the additional force to the engine, reduces it, to the engine, and it reduces the engine temperatures, as heat is not transferred to the piston walls, but converted more into usable force. It raises the efficiency of the engine at a much less exhaust and helps keep the engine clean. He uses catalytic cracking, using catalysts, metal catalysts, and steam reforming tech, and the Lavoisier experiment as his references. And dabbles into the hypothetical plasma gate. He was halfway there with it. French Tech Grant got the vid out on the GEET and did it the best and simplistic as he possibly could. And I'm going to link that in the description below. I know this sounds like fringe, but it's not. This is crazy, but I'm going to explain it the best I can. Imagine my picture I'm painting now. Instead of using an open fire to heat a gun barrel, shown in Lavoisier's experiment when he first got hydrogen from water, the gun barrel instead would have a smooth, specifically shaped ferromagnetic permeable rod inside of it, and the gun barrel itself had threaded ends to attach to things. It would be like this middle pipe, and the rod would be like there. Imagine if this newly modified gun barrel with threaded ends was surrounded by exhaust, or it could flow either way. And it would have smooth pipe, to make either a counterflow heat exchange or to make a single flow, the same direction, just a cross heat exchange. As long as the temperatures are there and heat exchange happens, to split the water vapors down, and the vapors would be pulled through the middle pipe under 8 to 11 or 12 inches of vacuum pressure. Also add droplets of droplets of fully gaseous vapors into it. Then imagine if the vapor-air mix at a ratio of 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. Then imagine that if that vapor-air mix starts to make static electricity by rubbing against the piping, it's ferromagnetic, inside the gun barrel that's got threaded ends on it now, through the triboelectric effect, like when you rub carpet or you rub your back, it would get certain cushion covers for couches, and you bump your thumb against solid metal, and you see a big bright spark and hurts your thumb. Same deal. The vapors would flow through the middle here at high speed. Speed of sound or faster while building up static charge. The hot and cold would collide fiercely. This sharp difference in temperature would cause the mix to develop twister-like winds, just like it, when hot and cold air forms wind that spirals and spins, help supercell thunderstorms drop their funnel clouds, or what happens in a hurricane, or what happens when you see a big bonfire on a cold fall, winter, or autumn night. Cold wind hits and makes a spiral of smoke off a big bonfire, a twister of smoke. Same effect. Now imagine that coming through there, making this rod pick up and spin fiercely because of these twister forces, and the vapor gas mix get pulled by vacuum up, and this builds up speed due to the combination of these, Bernoulli's principle and Venturi effect, to accelerate or speed up the matter under heat exchange. Once these things are in effect and the vapors are speeding inside under a vacuum got enough charge, the rod would serve as a grounding point for electrostatic discharge, which is like, imagine sparks and lightning striking into the rod. Now, and the vapors and air mix ionize due to what's called dielectric breakdown, which turns them into conductive, makes them conductive and carry charge, and that gets sucked in, absorbed by the rod, and the rod can turn into like a weak electromagnet. As a result, with additional purpose of serving to add surface area for cracking these vapor mixtures, these vapors into the mixture of elemental gases. If all of these conditions are right, plasma can form. Now, the crazier claim that Paul Pantone did was, if the plasma is big enough, the GEET's inner pipe and make high-speed vapors and wind around the rod under a high vacuum, which accelerates it, and the rod spinning, which adds to accelerate it more. So, and the plasma grows enough, and all these letter S's and N's, it's north, south, south, north, south, north, south, north. See that pattern? Every end, every end of every piece that makes a compass point north has to touch the end of every other piece that makes a ball compass. When you touch that end, point south. You got to have north plus south touching on every single piece. This pipe's north, touch that elbow or T's south end. Opposites attract principle. You have all these in effect. The claim is, once all these things are met, plasma will grow big enough to make a pinch. As if, and if there's remnant signatures, it'll pinch. And a pinch would be somewhere below the middle of the rod, somewhere towards the south end here, somewhere a little southward. Instead of being in the middle, it would be somewhere along in here. Using a combination of high school physics and early freshman year college physics and chemistry coming together in a very finicky way. I've seen the evidence it worked as a reformer. There's possible evidence on footage there might be small plasma formed if the conditions are right. But this other one, this other claim is what's got to be considered. Is it accurate? We'll have to find out. And that's what the claim is. That's how the GEET's supposed to work. And I will see you on episode 3, ladies and gentlemen. Take care.